Kia ora, everybody, and welcome to this Mindful Fashion Becoming a B Corp event. Before I continue, can people just let me know if they can't hear me through the chat? I have been having some trouble with my headphones, so apologies for that. Kia ora koutou, ko Jacinta tōku ingoa. I'm Jacinta Fitzgerald, the Program Director of Mindful Fashion New Zealand, and welcome all of you. Mindful Fashion is a collective of fashion and textile businesses. We're all united behind a common mission to create an innovative, full circle and thriving future for the clothing and textiles ecosystem in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We envision this sort of industry ecosystem to be one where people, nature and businesses all thrive within planetary boundaries. And so that's what we're working towards. It's imperative for anyone in business today to have holistic sustainability really at the core of their business. And a holistic approach considers the deeper purpose of a business and all the stakeholders that it engages with: social, cultural, natural, economic. So it's about responsibility to all of these stakeholders at the heart of decision making throughout a business. That's what makes today's event so important. B Corp is a tool that, in a nutshell, shows you how to do this. It gives you a framework to both assess your business and to guide you towards best practice. So we are delighted to have with us here today three leading voices in the B Corp and apparel industry community in New Zealand. And I'll just invite them to turn their cameras on if they want to. First, Tim Jones, an early adopter of B Corp in Aotearoa, a certified B himself through his own business, and through his business, Tim has worked with over 70 New Zealand businesses over the last many years. He'll be able to tell you how many on their B Corp journey. So really experienced B Corp consultant. Tim's going to tell us all about B Corp, why it's important, and how you can start your B Corp journey. Then we're also going to hear from two Mindful Fashion members who are certified B Corps. Fiona Bretherton, the development manager at Untouched World, will share what I know many are interested in from a local manufacturing perspective. And Emma, the managing director at Koto, will share their learnings and insights from their B Corp certification process. Then at the end, we'll have time for a Q&A. So definitely record your questions in the chat as we go, if you like, and we'll get to them at the end. Before I hand over to Tim, a little bit of housekeeping. We will use the Q&A function to facilitate the questions and answer session at the end, so please feel free to add them as you go. And for any other conversations or thoughts, you're happy to put them in the chat, and people can sort of engage with that during the event. We really want to encourage that. And we're also recording today's session, and this will be available to watch on demand over the next few days on our website. So that's all from me. Thank you, everybody. And I'd now like to hand over to Tim Jones to give us the lowdown on B Corp. Tim, welcome.
Hello, kia ora koutou. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Now, I'm pretty happy if you all want to put your videos on so we can see some happy, well, presuming you're happy smiling faces, as opposed to just a wall of black tiles, because this is also going to be one of those sessions where you get to do some mahi. So can everyone see my slides? That's the first question.
Yeah.
Excellent. Cool. So I guess, yeah, to be or not to be, the what, why, how of B Corp. As Jacinta said, I know a little bit about B Corp. So we certified as B Corp number 6 way back in the day in 2014. We're almost up to 100 companies we've worked with or are working with to help them go through B Corp. So I kind of know a little bit about B Corp. I also co-teach an MBA program here at UC called Creating Impact-Led Enterprises. So yeah, that's pretty much enough about me, I guess. What are we going to cover off? So I typically find there's a little bit of sort of fake news around what B Corp actually is. So hopefully we'll kind of demystify actually what this thing is, and equally demystify a little bit about the journey to get certified. I think I was having an email exchange with someone yesterday, and having given them some pointers, they were kind of like, okay, this actually looks pretty achievable. Well, it is. So hopefully we'll demystify the fact that it's this kind of really aspirational thing that only a chosen few will ever get to do. I think that's not true. And then we'll finish off by looking at some of the trends that are driving the rise of B Corp. and then finish off by looking at what I call the ROI times 2. So there is a return on impact. So we'll give some high level overview of where B Corps are doing some good globally. But also there is a potential return on investment. So if you are really focused, on balancing that purpose and the profit, well, B Corp could be the thing for you. Now, the history of B Corp, I like to call this like the creation myth story of B Corp. And I was pondering on this morning. It's kind of ironic that we're here talking to the fashion industry, and the instigator of the B Corp movement came from the fashion industry. Does anyone recognize this brand on the screen? Called And One. So back in the late 90s, they were second only to Nike when it came to basketball shoe sales. And the reason why it's, like I said, it's relevant is the co-founder of And One went on to become the co-founder of the B Corp movement. And his name was it still is, J. Cohen Gilbert. And One was a traditionally very successful business. And when we say that, what we mean is it made a lot of money. And they weren't really too concerned with how they made the money other than selling as many trainers as we can. And one day, hopefully we'll sell one more trainer than Nike and we win, everyone's great. And that was working for Jay up until September the 11th, 2001, when his sister was trapped in the Twin Towers in New York. Now, luckily, she was one of the survivors. She got out. And then about a week or two later, one of his close friends at And One passed away. Now, is anyone a Monty Python fan? Any Monty Python fans? Some of you look way too young to know Monty Python, who they even are. But Monty Python, 1970s UK comedy group. And they had this one sketch where they would slap each other in the face with this big fish. And what Jay had is what I call the existential wet fish to the face moment. So it's not uncommon if you have some big, significant, traumatic event in your life, it can lead to a massive wake-up call. And this is what Jay had. And he kind of realized that actually, I don't really care whether we ever beat Nike or not. And I kind of don't really care that we sell trainers. I kind of feel like maybe there's more I can do with my life. And so having had this moment, he started to look at the business and think about, well, how could I at least start doing some good on the journey whilst I'm in my business? So they started looking at their supply chain, and they wanted to get to a point where at least their immediate suppliers were, they could hand on heart say that everyone in those companies was being paid a good wage. They did a whole lot of stuff for their workers way before Google and all that stuff were doing all the cool stuff around, what do you call them, like pool tables and all that fun stuff. They started bringing into work, the yoga, the massage treatments and what have you, but they also created a significant employee ownership scheme. Similarly, the company was headquartered in Philadelphia, and there was quite a large, low socioeconomic population around where their office was. And so they created a leadership outreach program for at-risk youth to help them get onto, a better path in life. And having gone and done and implemented all these initiatives, the company went from strength to strength. Suppliers obviously thought they were really cool. Their employees thought they were amazing. Their local community thought, wow, you're doing some really good stuff for the community. And so the business went from strength to strength. Fast forward to 2005, and Jay's kind of, I've been running this business for a while. I think I want out. So he takes the business to Wall Street. And the first thing the Wall Street bankers do is look at the numbers. And, it's like, Jay, the numbers are terrible. Your brand's great, but the numbers are terrible. You're giving away all this money to all these people. So we need to rip all that out, which they did. And they sold the business. And walking away from the sale, he felt pretty shallow and hollow. And these guys have all got great names. He got together with Bart Houlihan, the CFO from And One, and Andrew Cassoy, one of the Wall Street bankers. And he said, look, I kind of feel like we sold out. Well, we literally did sell out to the man. Why don't the three of us get together and create a new business? And this time, all those kind of really cool community, social and environmental ideas that we had, we baked that in from the start, and we would not relinquish them. And so the guys like drinking a bit of whiskey. And so over a few, glasses of whiskey, they looked at, well, maybe we could create like a pizza franchise or another clothing company. And a few glasses of whiskey must have turned into a few bottles of whiskey, because eventually they said, or they came up with this idea of, well, instead of creating one more business, what if we created a global community and movement of businesses that aim to be the best for the world, not the best in the world? And so that's how B Corp came about in 2005, early 2006. So certified B corporations are this new form of business that must seek to balance purpose and profit. So rather than solely focusing on profit maximization and shareholder return, they must consider the impact of their operations on their workers, customers, suppliers, community, and the planet. And to do that, to get the certification, you go through this independent verification of your social and environmental performance and your accountability and transparency against that. So that's what the B Corp certification means. Like I said, beyond it being a little certificate that you can put on your clothing or on your logos or in your stores, it's a movement and a community of like-minded businesses. It's generally really easy to hang out and do work with other B Corps. Like there's just like a real vibe. There's equally a real community and growing community of people that just want to hang out and support B Corps. But beyond that, it is a commitment. You are stepping up to say, look, we intend to be the best that we can be. And, there's going to be some things where we maybe have to make difficult decisions about how we do stuff. But it's also an impact guide. So it's the verification is verification of the good that you're already doing. And you will all be surprised as to how much good you are already doing in your business. This happens every time people start looking at the assessment. But it's also a really cool tool to show you where you maybe aren't doing as good, or even to introduce new ideas to you that you just had no idea existed. All making sense? Excellent. Now, some people get confused because they hear of this thing called B Lab and they go, well, hang on a minute, is this competing with B Corp? No, it isn't. So B Lab is a non-profit movement or a non-profit organization that serves the global movement. And it does this by mainly being responsible for the running and maintenance and updating of the certification system, but also by having representatives locally in the regions to support the growth of the movement. So Kule Wong is our New Zealand B Corp community manager based in Auckland. So her role at B Lab is to engage with government, non-government agency groups, business industry at large, as well as being, I guess, like the hub for the community here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So B Lab, when the guys came up with the idea for B Corp, and I should say the B in B Corp stands for benefit. So when the guys came up with this idea of benefit corporations, it wasn't until 2007 that they kind of invented this concept of B Lab, and B Lab got into this region in about 2014. And globally, B Lab has a vision. And that vision is that all people will benefit from an economy that builds community and regenerates the environment. So that's the kind of the long-term endpoint goal. B Corps are fundamentally part of a movement. The long-term shift is systemic change and true stakeholder capitalism. That's ultimately what B Corp stands for. So as a B Corp or a wannabe, you're kind of working out, and some companies will typically have more of an impact on the social side, and some will typically have more of an impact on the environmental side. And there's a few really cool companies in the middle that do really well on both. But as a B Corp, you're kind of trying to work out, like, how are we going to play the biggest role that we can to push towards this vision? So the answer is, in general, you have to be a for-profit business. There are some charities that have certified, but we'll keep that as a separate conversation. If you're in a charity, you've got a real interest in a not-for-profit that you're a part of and you want to have a chat, like, email me. But in general, you need to be a for-profit business. In general, you can be any legal structure, so sole trader, limited company, cooperative, etc. Pretty much any geographical location you can be based in, apart from currently Russia and Belarus. And pretty much any industry, except for there is what's called the controversial industries list. So obvious things like an arms dealer, if you were selling endangered species, casinos are on that list, certain extractive industries are on that list. So there are some industries that they've just said, look, there's no way that you can even be the best version of you in terms of your social and environmental footprint, because your core output is just destructive. So, but none of you, I believe, will be on that list. So yeah, if we look around the world and around New Zealand, quite a few well-known names. Allbirds, obviously we try and claim them as a Kiwi B Corp, but honestly, realistically, they're based in San Fran, aren't they? Patagonia, I guess, apparel, loosely related to the fashion industry in many regards, one of the longest standing and highest scoring B Corps traditionally. Kathmandu is a B Corp. We always give a shout out to Eagle Protect. They were B Corp #1 in New Zealand, so they always need to get a shout out. Etique I think is possibly one of my more favorite B Corps. Because they've historically been the highest scoring B Corp. They were B Corp number 2. And for me, in terms of a business that's doing good, it's really hard to hate Etique because everything they do is just so good. And I think in the back of my mind, that's like a really useful metric to have. Is like, if people found out everything that we were really doing, how easy are we to like or dislike as an organization? And I think they've kind of really nailed the good that they do. Anyone got any B Corps that they're a particular fan of? Obviously, we've got Untouched World and Kowtow. But other than that, anyone else got a B Corp that they make use of? Do you know?
I love People's Coffee.
People's Coffee, excellent. Are you Amanda, fueled by People's Coffee? Saida, you had?
Well, Period Care.
Yep. Anyone else? We got Kiwi Bank's also a B Corp, Co-op Bank's a B Corp. There's quite a lot of opportunity now to actually live your life through a B Corp lens, which is pretty cool.
I was going to say Stuff. I like Stuff.
Stuff is also a B Corp. Yeah. So like this wide range of industries. A lot of people will say to me, oh, look, this is only for big business because I'm a small business and this is just too hard. And then a lot of small businesses go, well, no, this is just for big business because, you need to have lots of stuff and be doing lots of things. It's not. For me, it's about mindset and intent. If you're looking for a framework and a guide to help you understand the good that you're currently doing and the good that you can do, whether you've got literally 0 employees or thousands of employees, you can make use of this framework. So the impact assessment looks at your business across the 5 main areas of customers, workers, community, environment, and customer model. And then there's these disclosure questionnaires, which is where they just make sure that you're not trying to sneak through as a company that has been selling endangered parrots on the quiet on your Shopify account as a little side hustle. So yeah, those are the 5 main areas. And if we look at them at a slightly deeper level, here we go. So governance is mainly around ethics and transparency. So do you have things like a code of ethics, whistleblower policies in place, things like that? How transparent is your company in terms of, do we know who owns the company? Do you have lots of shell companies? Are you doing reporting beyond just financial reporting? So do you do an impact report? Are there social and environmental KPIs that the company from all levels up to the board level are tracking? Workers, typically, if you've got a New Zealand-based workforce, companies typically score pretty highly on this section because we get a lot of favorable trade wins from being in New Zealand. Because compensation looks at things like holiday entitlement, parental leave entitlement, access to healthcare, access to paid leave, which, by virtue of being in New Zealand, you're getting quite a few points in that section. The other area it looks at is worker development. So opportunities for career development, training, skills-based training, cross-skill training, so on and so forth. The community section, it kind of feels like they got to the end, they created the assessment of like, hang on a minute, where should we put that? I will just chuck it in community. Because it is quite a broad area of assessment. So it looks at job creation and ideally local job creation. Local ownership of the company. So are the people who run and own your business, are they based close to where the majority of the business are, or are they overseas? It looks at diversity of ownership, governance, and employees. And it also looks at your charitable and community contributions. So if you've done in-kind donations, pro bono work, or just cash donations. And particularly for companies like yourselves, where you have a product, there will be some questions around your supply chain. And there will be potentially, what we're finding is most of the companies we're working with who have a product, a physical product, the supply chain one is where everyone is weakest. It's kind of like we buy some stuff off someone called Sally in Auckland, and she seems really nice, but we don't really know where Sally gets her stuff from. So it's quite interesting, looking at the supply chain journey for companies at the minute. The environment is at the highest level inputs and outputs. So energy in, raw materials in, and then outputs, water output, waste output, emissions output, so on and so forth. And then the customer model, again, at the highest level, looks at things like, do you have quality assurance, guarantees, warranties? Are you tracking customer satisfaction? However, you will see around the bottom and the side of the slides, there is the lighter blue writing in the dark blue box. So there's actually 2 parts to the impact assessment. The general assessment is a measure of your operational goodness. So whilst you are making your fine apparel, how good are we in terms of our operational doings? Like, we're treating our staff good, you know, we're doing well in our community, etc. The impact business model, again, depending on your sort of age range, is either going Pokemon hunting, or it's kind of like a Super Mario bonus level. So an impact business model is where if you can demonstrate and prove that you've gone out of your way to create more positive social and or environmental impact than you are legally required to do, then you will unlock an impact business model. And that's where the companies that score really high points, so over like 100 points plus, you have unlocked an impact business model. So Kathmandu, sorry, not Kathmandu, Patagonia, as an example, you know, I'm pretty confident, have unlocked impact business models under the environment section, under resource conservation, because they're taking plastic bottles, you know, or waste plastic bottles and making them into garments. So you don't have to do that. They've gone out of their way to create that as a new mechanism to make their clothing. One thing to be aware of, there is now a requirement under the governance section called the legal requirement mission lock. So basically what this means is to be a B Corp in Australia, New Zealand, the US, the UK, pretty much most, if not all of the countries now, you have to be willing and able to update your company constitution to include a purpose clause and a stakeholder clause. If you're like really serious about going down the B Corp journey, either contact me, or there'll be some information that I'll get to Jacinta to get out to you. But if everyone's kind of been like, if you're serious about going down the B Corp journey, particularly if you're in a slightly larger company where you might have got a board and investors, there's typically a conversation that needs to be had around that. If you're a small privately owned business that's kind of really committed to doing B Corp, it's a really easy step to go through. So I won't dwell too much on that one. The workers one, the two ways you can unlock impact business models here is either having significant worker ownership or having what would be called a workforce development program. So I'm trying to think of, well, yeah, so an example would be you having a pathway to employment where there's training and coaching and assistance, and you might be focusing on people with a disability, or you might be focusing on, say, Māori Pacifica, or you might be focusing on people exiting the justice system, essentially people who are underrepresented in the employment stakes. If you show that you've got like a development pathway to work for a group of people, then that would be how you could unlock the points there. Under community, the two most common ways we see people seeking to do good here is one is called design to give, where literally you just give 2% of your revenue to a charity or your own foundation, or you can provide ownership in a charity, ownership of your company to a charity or your own foundation. And the other one would be fair trade or direct trade purchasing in your supply chain. Those are the two most common ones there. The environment one, there's potentially a few ways, and again, this is where until you kind of get into the assessment, you might not know. But you know, under the environment section, you would get recognition for using organic input materials. So if you had organic certified cotton going into any of your products, you would get impact business model points recognition for that. If you were doing, like I say, making use of a waste product from another industry to make your product. So if you're taking plastic or other, you know, raw materials from another industry's waste stream and putting it into yours, then that would be a resource conservation impact business model. So yeah, it's pretty hard to assess whether you've got one without knowing more about your business. But what we find is most people underestimate in terms of their impact business model points, because they either just don't understand the questions or they just don't think they're going to meet the threshold. But most people are happily surprised that they do meet that threshold. And then under the customer one, the main ones that would be relevant for you as an industry typically. So under the health one, if you're making sports clothing or any clothing that is specifically made for physical activity, that can potentially unlock an impact business model because you're providing a mechanism for people to be able to stay fit and healthy. And the other one would be if you have some element of artisanal craft, or if you're preserving an historical method of clothing manufacturing or production, then there would be potentially, like a cultural based impact business model under customers, because you're preserving a methodology of creating a product for your customers. Like I say, the impact business models they're tricky to get. You have to have a lot of evidence to be able to prove that you're doing, but equally, a lot of companies we're working with, it's like you've totally got an impact business model, but you just hadn't recognized it because quite often you're the fish in water. You're doing the good. You don't think that it's above and beyond what you should be doing. So yeah. Does that all make sense? The impact business models? Cool. So how do you actually go and certify? Well, when we work with companies, we make it really clear that you have to get your whole team on board. And we're really dogmatic about making sure that the whole company understands what B Corp is and why you're going on the journey and what you hope to get out of it. If you're going to go solo and do it by yourselves, you definitely need to have someone internally who we would call the king or the queen bee, whose job ultimately is to be in charge of the B Corp assessment, to make sure that all the questions are answered. They are the person who's going to be going and annoying all the other people in the company. Hey, CFO, hey, marketing person, hey, this team, that team. I just need to know what this, I need to know some data from here. I need to understand how we do that. Ideally, again, we are firm believers in getting as many of your team to come and be a part of the process as possible. One of the best examples we've had recently was when we helped Genora. They had the entire company sit down with me and go through the entire assessment. And they got so much out of that in terms of shared knowledge, understanding, seeing what all the other teams are doing, understanding why, oh, okay, that's why we can't do that because you need to do it this way. And they just never had a forum for that kind of discussion. So yeah, definitely get a project team together. And then basically you go online, and again, we'll get these links to you. So if you search on the internet for B impact assessment, you will go to the place that you need to go to. All you need to do is create an account. It is free to create an account. It is free to play around on the B Corp impact assessment for as long as you want. The only time you'll pay money is if you want to click the submission button to go and get verified and audited by the B Lab team. So you can totally just go and use the assessment as an impact guide framework tool to see how you would hypothetically be doing. And so basically it's like an online assessment, and you just go through it question by question. And typically the more buttons you click, or the further down the list you go, the higher the points are. And you need to get a minimum of 80 out of 200 on this self-assessment. Like I say, once you're over the 80 out of 200, click submit. You then sit in a queue. The queue is quite long at the minute. It can be up to 8 months plus. And that's just basically because so many people want to be a B Corp right now. The good news is you can use that time for what I call mission creep. So answer all the questions, click submit, and whilst you're in the queue, tinker with your score, chip away at some policies, procedures, do some more things, and get your score to go up and up and up until your assessment eventually will get locked by the assessor to say, no, you can't fiddle with it anymore because I actually now need to start looking at how you've answered. And so, yeah, you'll go through the independent auditor from B Lab will then go through your work, and they will start highlighting questions for verification. And so then you will be called for an audit call, which is typically a 90-minute to 2-hour call, depending on the size and scale of your business, where they will have picked certain questions that they want to audit you on. Some of those will be a verbal audit. I'll pick on Margot because she's keen to be a B Corp. So they'll say, hey, Margot, so you're claiming here that you do ABC. Can you just explain to me a time that you've recently done that and what was the outcome? And you'll have a verbal chat, and they'll go, yeah, that sounds great. Sometimes we've even taken like the phone on the Zoom call and gone, look, here's Margot. She's actually making the thing right now. This is how she does it. Yeah, she looks really happy. Yeah, cool. So you can do that. And then the remainder of the questions will be an audit where there is requirement for documentation and proof and evidence of what you've claimed. So let's say if you're claiming that you've got 20% of your supply chain is fair trade, it's like, great, okay, well, we will now need to see a download from Xero showing where you spend all your money. We need you to highlight all of your raw material suppliers, and you need to tell us which ones are fair trade certified, and we need to see a copy of their certification, or fair trade needs to prove that they are fair trade certified. The big piece of advice would be, you do not need to provide evidence for every question. The auditor will tell you what evidence they need to see. And we see this time and time again. People spend 2 years trying to get through the assessment because they stop at every question and they create a beautiful 20-page PDF. And then they get to the audit, and either they're not audited on that question, or the auditor goes, that's a really great PDF, but all I needed was a spreadsheet with like 5 names on it. So don't do too much on that. Wait to see what you're audited on. That being said, clearly, if you're claiming you have a policy, like, have the policy written, so don't game it, but know that you can prove it, but don't get too stressed about having to prove it before you get to the audit, because you'll waste time. 100%. So yeah, once you've gone through that audit, so long as you're still over the 80 out of 200 mark, they will ask you to pay the remainder of your certification fee, and they will send you a little email saying, congrats, you're a B Corp. You then get to download your B Corp certificate, put the logo on everything, and tell everyone how amazing you are. But really, that's when it just begins, because the clock is now ticking for your 3-year recertification. And, you know, it's like, yes, have a big party, tell everyone you're amazing. But then the mahi starts again. It's like, okay, well, how can we be better within 3 years? How do we maybe get our score to go up? All making sense on that? Any questions around that one?
Tim, is there a requirement for your score to actually increase on the second assessment?
There's no mandated requirement for that. And what we typically find, some companies will kind of come in at 80 and then they chip up to like 85, then 90, then 100. My company was a classic example of the opposite. We went from sort of, I think, 84 to 92 to 86. So some bounce up and down, some have linear, some flatline. There's no requirement for you to, and sometimes, you know, circumstances change. It's worth noting that there is no one assessment. There's about 70 different assessments depending on the size, scale, geographic location, and industry that you're in. So some companies will find if they go up a threshold of number of employees, for example, that can fundamentally alter the assessment. And you might not be doing as well as a bigger company because there's more requirements around documentation, and there's a deeper level of expectation when you're a bigger company. So yeah, as long as you're over the 80 threshold, you're all good. Cool. Any more on that? Nope. Excellent. But this is the thing. Like I say, I kind of think a lot of people see that B Corp is this aspirational end goal. Like when everyone's a B Corp, we've done it. Like life's going to be amazing. But if you look at, this is made up by me, the Continuum of Impact by Jones et al. 2019. You know, right now, the number of B Corps we have in New Zealand is 0.01% of limited companies in New Zealand are currently a B Corp. So the vast majority of businesses in New Zealand, in the world, are operating as business as usual. And by that, what we mean is you trade solvently and legally, we are in business. So apologies to anyone if you're a vapor, but you know, there are people out there now trying to work out, how do we sell vapes to 12-year-olds? Like, how do we kind of get around that? How can we at least market to them? How can we get them ready for that? As long as you're not breaking the law in how you're doing it, you're good to go. Above that, and I think this is where we're seeing a massive expansion of greenwashing, is this CSR. You know, there's a lot of companies making a lot of claims about stuff, but it's like, well, says who? Like, has it been independently verified? Possibly not. Is it a marketing claim? Quite possibly, which is why I like B Corp. It is not the silver bullet. It is not the thing that is going to fundamentally make every business be the best business that it can be. But it's the only framework that we've got that is globally recognized, is independently verified, and is social and environmental performance. And that, for me, is why it is the best thing that we've got out there. And, you know, to get B Corp, you have to be kind of doing okay across these 5 areas of your business. Now, beyond that, obviously, you've got an impact business model based B Corp, someone like a Teak. But really, if we are collectively to meet the vision that B Lab has set, but also realistically, if we're to have any hope of us all having a good old time on this planet in the next 50, 100 years, every business ultimately has to become regenerative. And by that, what we mean is every dollar of product or service that you sell only has a positive impact. So there is no extraction at all. And right now, there are very few companies that can actually put their hands up and say that we are regenerative. I mean, New Zealand Merino, they're certainly not a regenerative company, full stop, but they have got elements within their sort of supply chain, within their product mix, that are pushing towards regeneration. Interface is one of the only companies globally that at scale is recognized as being a regenerative company. And if you're interested in learning more about that, there's a really cool YouTube keynote talk by Ray Anderson, who was their CEO, who interestingly had a very similar near-death experience. I think he either had a cancer scare or a heart attack. He had some significant health traumatic kind of event, which led him to literally come back into the business and go, we're ripping up the business plan, we're destroying the planet, that seems pretty silly, let's work out how we can do that. So B Corp is definitely achievable. It's rigorous, but an achievable framework. It's the highest level of scrutiny that we've got right now, but it's not going to solve all our problems. But it'll give you some great indicators as to where you could go on that trajectory to be the best business that you would need to be. All right. Any questions on that before we come into the final part? No? Cool. And obviously, you know, just entering the work that Mindful Fashion doing is, you know, all around that kind of stuff and pushing for that sort of direction. So you're probably all clued in on that. All right, so maybe chuck some answers in the chat for this one. We'll just do this one quickly. So thinking for you as an individual, what are social and environmental challenges that you see out there in the world? So I'll give you one. Like for me, plastic pollution, the more I look into plastic pollution, the hormonal and endocrine disaster that plastics in the body is for humans and the planet, and like it absolutely scares me the wits out of me when I look at how much plastic is involved in my life and the food and water and all the rest of it. So plastic pollution for me is a really, really big thing that I'm passionate about. So for you as an individual, what is the big social or environmental thing that kind of keeps you awake at night? A lot of environmental based stuff for you as a group, which is, I guess, kind of understandable. But you know, when we look, like there's planetary stuff, there's pollution, there's plastics, there's a whole lot of environmental stuff, overconsumption, waste, there's a whole lot of that stuff. In the middle, I put, we demand justice and change. Well, for every social cause that you can possibly think of, there is probably a Facebook group with 1 million people that have the same opinion as you, that you can now connect with and demand some kind of social change. And this is why business is being forced to step up, because suddenly people are kind of going, well, hang on a minute, I kind of interact with the business and I also care about these things. So, they're having to step up and think about these things. And I think COVID really accelerated that. I think one of the big moments for me was kind of when companies were asked to prove that they were essential. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, if you're not essential to humanity, then why are you even in business anyway? Like, I think that's a really interesting question to ponder on. And that you as individuals make up one of the 4 groups of humans that every business needs. So again, put some answers in the chat. If you think about, you've got a business in the middle, and I don't mean like leaders, doers, thinkers, and I don't mean different like personality types, but like if you think about it really, really basically, for you to be in business, you need typically four groups of humans. Who is the obvious human that you need in your business for a business to run? Put it in the chat. So this is the thing, you as an individual, you are a customer, you have customers coming to you year on year. Like these numbers are impossible to keep up with. I've got some like articles again, if Jacinta or Saida can remind me of all the things I've said, I'm going to give you, because I probably will forget. There's a whole lot of evidence showing that customers increasingly want to support the brands that can prove the good that they're doing. Think about you as an employee. Employees are increasingly expecting their employer to have some kind of greater purpose and more meaningful societal impact. One of my favorite stats, because it is so awful, it came from a YouGov survey in the UK. I think it was 2017, 2018. And about 30% of respondents said that their job provided them with no meaning, and that more than likely their job was contributing to destroying the planet. And we wonder why there's a mental health crisis. I don't think it's actually that. I think it's quite obvious as to why there is a mental health crisis when it comes to that side of things. Supply chain. So this is from EcoVadis. 69% of respondents from one of their 2019 surveys said that they are taking sustainability performance into consideration when selecting new suppliers and renewing contracts. We're now seeing, like in the food and beverage sector, companies that make one raw ingredient in a product, customers are now saying to the retailer in the UK, who've then gone to the distributor in the UK, who have gone to the main product manufacturer, who's now gone back to the ingredient supplier. The questions are now being asked, like to the raw ingredient person, what are you doing? Like, how do you make your stuff? We want to know about your social and environmental impact. So depending where you are on that value chain, it's either going to be the customer or potentially a supply chain pressure that's coming your way. And if you are a business looking for sort of growth and expansion, or even just getting some investment for day-to-day operations, like sustainable investments are here. Like you kind of know when the financial industry gets it, it's a thing. And perhaps best demonstrated last year, where Kathmandu were issued a $100 million Australian dollar loan by ANZ Bank, which was basically indexed to their sustainable performance. As it says here, their performance we measured against reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, their B Corp certification, and improving the transparency essentially of their supply chain. So we're now also seeing this at a lower level. So ANZ now have got small business loans with a sustainability, sort of angle to them, as have Kiwibank. So you know, this is why it's kind of, I feel like it's a slam dunk argument for B Corp. Everyone that your business interacts with at some level, if not more than one of them, is going to be asking you, if they're not already asking you, like, hey, what are you doing? And can you prove to me the claims that you've made? Cool. Do B Corps do any good? Well, yes, they do. So every year, B Lab creates an annual impact report where it gets all this data from all these B Corps all around the world. And B Corps are doing pretty good. So in general, B Corps twice as likely to be offsetting their emissions compared to their non-B Corp peer. 63% of B Corps hire workers that have historically been from underemployed populations, and 7-to-1 is the average pay ratio for a B Corp compared to an average of 144-to-1 in the market. Anyone know what Jeff Bezos's ratio is of his salary compared to his lowest paid worker? This is a real good one. 6,000-to-1. Woo! That's how you buy a rocket, ladies and gentlemen. 6,000-to-1 ratio is what you need to be aiming for. Cool. But does it make financial sense? Because, you know, this is the tricky thing. Like, you can't do good without having some money to go and do the good. It's a real tension. I totally get it. I'm a small business that, you know, we're trying to do as much good as we can, but I have a mortgage to pay at the end of every month and a small mouth to feed, and a dog to look after. So this is from 2018, a UK journal called The Grocer, which kind of looks at FMCG products in the UK. They did this study of the 150 UK B Corps at the time. It's worth noting that they're now almost at 1,000 B Corps. So that shows you the rate of expansion of the movement in the UK. B Corps on average grew 28 times faster than GDP. So average growth for a B Corp was 14% compared to 0.5% growth in GDP. 35% said that new customers had been attracted to them specifically because they were a B Corp, and 48% new staff had been attracted to the company because they were a B Corp. And then there's this one from our mates at the University of Ghent, where they did a panel data set study of European B Corps that certified between 2010 and 2018, I think it was, where they basically say this paper empirically shows that B Corp certification positively impacts the turnover growth rates 1 year pre versus 1 year post certification. So this is why, for me, it's kind of a slam dunk argument, because if you just care about making more money, you should be a B Corp. But clearly, if you kind of care about social and environmental stuff and you want to make sure you're doing the best that you can be, you should be a B Corp. And what's even better is that B Corps are super resilient. So again, this is from B Lab's impact report. 52% of B Corps hired more employees in the middle of a global pandemic. 47% had employee growth of more than 15%. And 2/3 of all B Corps increased revenue in the middle of a global pandemic. And a lot of people go, yeah, but clearly they were all selling PPE or COVID-related equipment. Far from it. We had similar data collected post-GFC. And the reason why I think B Corps are resilient, and the reason why you would hopefully get this uptick in sort of profitability, is because your customers care about you. They want to see you win. Your employees care about you. They want to see you succeed. Your supply chain cares about you because you care about them. And the environment cares about you because you're treating it with respect. And I think that is how you build this resiliency in, is by building a better business. And then to finish off, just some numbers for you. So the B Corp movement, like I say, B Lab started 2006. It took from 2006 until I think it was 2019 or 2020 to get to 4,000 B Corps. We got from 4,000 to 5,000 in under a year, and we're now almost at 6,000 in like 8 months. So the B Corp, it is here. 38% growth in the movement in 2020, 2021. That's why the queue is really big for the certification. But still with this one unifying goal of us all trying to be the best for the world. And so I will finish off with the words of Rose Macario, the former CEO of Patagonia. The B Corp movement is one of the most important of our lifetime, built on the simple fact that business impacts and serves more than just shareholders. It has an equal responsibility to the community and to the planet. That is me. Are we going to do questions now, or do you want to get the other Bs to do their thing and then do Q&A at the end? I can't remember.
I'd like to do Q&A in the end if that's okay with you. I think we'll move on. But thank you so much, Tim. That was awesome. A few things that I just pulled out of that that I found really useful were the approaching it as a business and getting the whole team involved in the B Corp journey, which I think that's a really important thing to think about. And that it's not just the destination. It's a really useful tool to get you started. from business as usual through to the impact business model, but we're ultimately aiming for this much more regenerative business models. That's where we all need to head. So really good insight from that. I've got a useful slide I can share on that as well later. Thank you. So now I'd like to introduce Fiona Bretherton from Untouched World. Fiona is a development manager at Untouched World and was involved and is involved in their B Corp certification, and is going to share with us some of their journey and learnings and any other bits of intelligence and knowledge that she has about B Corp and how it works for Untouched World. So welcome, Fiona.
Thanks, Jacinda. First of all, can you hear me okay? Yep, cool. Excellent. So thanks, Tim. That was awesome. Just reminded me back through the journey of what we took a little while ago. So for those that don't know, Untouched World, the company, which then was called Snowy Peak, was founded by Perry Drysdale in the 1980s. During the 1990s, while she was travelling the world with Snowy Peak, she noticed the pollution and degradation of areas she was travelling to. The sort of changes you would notice just when you go to a place once rather than actually living there. Where she would notice a lake one year that was pristine, and then the following year she went back to the same place and there was a sign up saying, you know, don't touch the water, it's polluted. She also noticed at the same time that it felt like no one, including government, was talking about these pollution issues back then. So long story short, Perry decided she couldn't carry on in business without doing something about these issues she was seeing. So that was when Untouched World, the brand, was born in 1997. And its sole purpose for being was to create a better tomorrow for people and the planet by inspiring positive change. Our journey with B Corp started quite a number of years ago when we were looking for the right certification to back up the good work that we were doing. We did a lot of research into different certifications, what they stood for, what they costed to apply, and if they were properly audited, because we just weren't interested in going for a certification that wasn't audited by a third party. After much research, B Corp was it for us. Nothing else came close. So B Corp takes a complete holistic view, as Tim's mentioned, covering everything from governance, staff, community, environment, and our customers, which was everything that we were looking for. So as I mentioned, we first started looking at B Corp some time ago. Back then, the questions in some of the categories were more targeted towards companies that had offshore manufacture, and so they weren't really relevant for us that we had our manufacturing here in New Zealand. So we decided at the time that it wasn't quite right for us with our local manufacturing, and we put the certification on hold. However, in early 2019, we started to look at it again. We jumped on the impact assessment website and read through some of the questions. These had now changed to become more relevant for onshore manufacturing in a country like New Zealand. So we decided to go for it. What started in mid-2019 became an 18-month journey for us before we got to the certification approval point. However, just keeping in mind we had a pandemic that started in 2020, so we were somewhat distracted in between with that. So what it took to get started was for one person in the company to be tasked, as Tim mentioned, I can fully vouch for that, with gathering and answering the questions on the impact assessment tool. That ended up being me. I certainly didn't know all the answers, but I did know who to send the questions to find out. So that was key. That was really the key thing, was having one person responsible for driving it within a larger team. I chipped away at the questions several hours per week. Each time I thought I'd answered them all, more questions came up, because depending on how you answer some questions, the assessment presents more questions on that topic. So just be prepared for lots of questions. Finally, I had answered all that I could. We had more than enough points to go for the certification, so we pushed the go button to go through the process. What we found out from here was we were great at doing all the great stuff, just not documenting it. So anyone wanting and thinking going for B Corp, start documenting what you're doing. Throughout the audit process, we lost several points through this lack of correct documentation, but this alone has been a great learning curve for us. So we ended up actually on 83.5 points and 43.4 points alone in the environment category. We now have a great improved roadmap on the areas that we want to help to improve on our journey with sustainability. Being a certified B Corp in 2021 was a really proud moment for us. Joining a community of like-minded companies has been so valuable for us to push our sustainability message even further, and also to help bounce ideas around other great companies. To wrap up, I can strongly recommend for those businesses thinking about going for B Corp to just do it. Even if it's not to get certified, the impact assessment tool to help improve your journey along the way is awesome. And it doesn't cost a thing other than your time. So good luck, and hope you go well with your B Corp journey. Thanks, Jacinda.
Kia ora, thanks Fiona. That was awesome to hear how you tackled it, a few questions or a few hours a week. Really, really useful sort of way to understand that approach. Thank you. And Fiona will be happy to answer questions at the end in the Q&A as well. So please record those if you have them. I'd now like to invite Emma Wallace, the Managing Director of Koto, to share a little bit about their B Corp certification journey and yeah, share her insights. Welcome, Emma.
Thanks, Jacinda. Hi, everyone. I can't see you all on the screen, but awesome to get people together. I think for us at Koto, anytime we have an opportunity to talk about anything to do with fashion and sustainability, we jump at the chance because it's completely in our DNA and dear to our heart. Thanks, Fiona. I really felt for you when you were talking about the process and the seemingly never-ending questions. I was the queen bee in our organisation, and sometimes I felt like I was slightly losing my mind because you'd go in there and then suddenly this whole other part had opened up for you, and you had to explore these questions and bring people in to keep on going, have we looked at this before, and get sense checked all the time. So it's I don't want to put people off, but yeah, if you do feel like it's a little bit overwhelming at first, you're not alone. And I think that is the other really great thing about the experience we had in B Corp is actually there's an incredible amount of support around you as you were doing this. Ask questions of B Lab. If you're working perhaps with someone like Tim to help you navigate, they are an incredible resource. Tap into it. Don't feel like a question is too dumb or silly, or we don't make sense, or we don't even know what you're talking about, because you know, like us, you know, we're in the business of making and selling clothes as sustainability as possible, not creating policies and reports. So, you know, quite a challenge for businesses when they're at a certain point that they actually need to start becoming a little bit more robust. It's part of the development and growth of your business. It's exciting, and it's actually, you know, going to make your business better in the long run. But I do remember the first time I sat down, I think it was actually a summer holiday, and I thought, oh, why don't I just take a look at this B Corp thing and kind of understand what it is? And I started answering questions, and I rapidly realized it was a really big job. So as to Fiona's point again, you do need to work as a team. Bring in the people who have the expertise in the different areas, and it'll be amazing the kind of conversations that they start having together and creating this network even within your organization, because we do think that everyone kind of knows what everyone else is doing, but you don't. You don't know what some of the things that people are doing, and I think the questions that come up in B Corp can open up some really awesome discussions within your organization and your business. What else did I think was awesome about it? I really saw the value in the sense of community that B Lab nurtures, and that doing business that is good for people and planet links you to a global movement. And that in turn creates more positive impact, which is essentially what we all need to be doing, right? When you come from a fashion industry, which is absolutely dripping in greenwashing, You know, good businesses need to have frameworks and validation to give customers confidence. A little bit of background of Koto, you may or may not know, but we started in 2006. Gosha Piantek is our founder. And from day one, she wanted to have a business that looked after people and planet. So from day one, we're a certified fair trade company and have only worked with fair trade supply chains. So I know that's a little bit different for some businesses. I'm not sure how many are on this call who are overseas manufacturers or New Zealand manufacturers. But I would encourage you to really, you know, look deep into your supply chain. You know, we were fortunate in that there was probably a bit of overlap between the work that we'd already done with fair trade and B Corp. So it sort of allowed us to kind of have a bit of an access place. But even in saying that, there was still a lot of more, you know, more work that we were sort of astonished that we still had to do to become more robust and to really understand that local manufacturing. Never be afraid to ask questions of your supplier, you know, depending on the support you have in a company. And I'm hoping you know, this support comes from the top level down. It sort of has to, you know, you will be supported to ask those difficult questions, because if we all don't ask the questions, then people don't feel accountable. They can just carry on doing what they're doing. And I've myself seen in the industry that I think, you know, probably 10 years ago, if you asked a fabric supplier, where were they getting their fabric from, all this kind of stuff, they might have gone, I'm not really going to tell you. But there is already an openness that is coming our way. So be part of that, questioning. What else did I have in there? I think we have already enjoyed some of the social activities of B Corp. So, you know, if you like a bit of networking, it's really great. You'll end up having lunch with a group of people who've come from all sorts of different industries, but it's amazing when you are coming together with this common goal, how much you can share and learn from each other. So I think that's really important. We're not going to make the change that we need as a world unless we come together in a collaborative about it. It's going to keep you accountable, and it's also going to give you an amazing toolbox. It's already done that for us as a company. One thing I did note, actually, Tim, and you have helped a little bit from my understanding, I was still a little bit confused around the impact business models. So they're quite meaty, but yeah, thank you very much for explaining them a bit better. And I think the other challenge for an organization, no matter how big or small you are, is bringing your team on board and explaining it to them. So it took us a little while to even understand it for ourselves. And I was put on the spot actually in Sydney at an event at David Jones about talking about B Corps. And they said, Emma, you want to talk about B Corps, don't you? And I was literally 3 months into being B Corp certified. And I said, yeah, sure. And what encapsulated it to me is that the B actually stands for benefit, in my understanding. So when you think about doing things that are going to benefit people and planet, and also your business, you know, because to be a sustainable business, it needs to be financial. I thought that actually sums it up. You know, it is about that benefit, always putting that benefit and that positivity. Yeah, so I think that's about it. I don't know if you want to go, I didn't want to go on and on about how long it takes to be assessed, because I know there is delays and there's COVID impact and all those sorts of things, but honestly, you know, be patient and, you know, it will happen, you know, if you do all that groundwork.
Thanks so much, Emma. Lots of really interesting insights there. For me, like really useful to think about even your last point about the B. What does the B stand for? Like, what is this movement? What is this impact assessment? What is this business model that we're trying to do? And always coming back to that B, which, you know, is benefit for people, nature, and your business. I think it's really useful way to think about it. And also the community, like the community of other businesses and being part of a global movement towards better businesses and finding a way for business to be good for the world. So, you know, that's such an important movement to be part of. I think we'll turn over to Q&A, but what I've got a question to start the ball rolling, and I'd be really interested to hear from all three of you about this, because it just sparked an idea when you were talking, Emma, about if you're not someone who's a really senior manager or the managing director of a company, and you're really keen to get your company to take part in B Corp, what are some tools, what are some strategies that somebody could use to get their senior leadership team or their executive on board with this, or take it to their board? Like, what are some tools that you guys have sort of seen that you could recommend? Maybe Emma first.
I thought, Tim, your stats. I think stats are always impactful. Visual stats like that, encapsulating, the different levels. Because I mean, if you're doing this, you're sort of going, it is going to be better for the environment and people, but it's also bringing in those sort of financial stats. I think that can be really valuable.
Thank you. Yeah, Fiona, anything to add?
Tricky one for me to answer, only because just what I know, we've got Perry who was all for it, and so it's was sort of almost part and parcel of the company anyway, even before we went on the journey. But yeah, definitely I agree with the stats, to bring those to the people that need to see them, probably particularly around finance and so on. And yeah, just start doing the questions, I guess, is a good way to start. If you're in a position in the company where you can start to take a bit of a lead on all of the environmental, sustainability, governance, any of those areas, just go and sign up to the impact assessment and just start looking at the questions. Because like I said, regardless if you end up going for certification or not, those questions are fantastic to start probing some ideas and some thoughts as to what you could be doing better, what you're already doing that's great, and things that you could make changes in.
Thank you. Yeah, Tim, anything?
Yeah, for me, I get this increasingly often. I call them the concerned citizen. It's like someone in a company they've heard about B Corp, they're buying B Corp stuff, they want to do. In fact, I've just had this happen last week. So I worked with her to go, right, what are the 3 things keeping your CEO awake at night? Like, go and ask them. And it will be employee retention, talent attraction, reputational risk. Like, the CEOs of companies are already thinking about the problems that B Corp can solve. It's just that they typically might not have heard of B Corp and thought about how that could solve the problem. So that's where I always start. It's like, what is the company trying to achieve? And is B Corp a tool that will help them achieve that? And again, 9 times out of 10, it will be a really good option to have a look at.
Such a great point. Thank you. Anyone in the audience have any questions? Feel free to just take yourself off mute. If you can, you should be able to, and ask them or throw them in the chat, and I'm happy to ask them. But now's a really good opportunity. What is the cost, from Sarah? Any insight on the cost to become B Corp certified?
Well, my go-to reply is, what's the cost of not being certified? So the fees are based off, it's a sliding scale based on your company's revenue. I'll get that sent to you. But if you go if you go to bcorporation.com.au, it's not the easiest website to navigate, but yeah, I'll make sure we get that level of information out to everyone. But I mean, literally, like the cost that you'll get back, and this is why we're so dogmatic about bringing the team on the journey. If you just nail the worst thing you can do is send an all company email, hey everyone, we're a B Corp, and the company goes, well, what's that? Why aren't we an A Corp and were we a C Corp? If you bring the team on the journey, you will get your certification fee back immediately, and then you go and have the conversation with your customers.
Yeah, I can highly vouch for looking into some other certifications, that the cost that you pay for B Corp is very marginal for the work that the B Corp or the B Lab team do to audit you, and the time that they spend on your company to help you. And then after that, once you're certified, the community that you're involved in, and then the support that you get along the way is it really is a no-brainer to go for the certification and to pay the cost.
I think it can be hard for small businesses because, everyone is already at capacity. Everyone is already so busy. So how do you make time in this? So, I mean, I kind of think, I don't know, we had a session with an advisor about 2 years ago, and basically he started off by saying to us, you being a sustainable business isn't news anymore. every business is going to have to be sustainable to be a business. So if you're not actually engaging in this conversation, your business is going to be redundant. So like the time, if you can make the time, it's great. There was a woman, one of the first people I met, who was a B Corp. She was a one-man band, and she made the time for it because she said she wanted to start her business with the right framework. And it's like, it's, you know, we spend so much time doing other stuff. Just put a bit of time aside to this.
The vast majority of B Corps globally are small to medium enterprises.
Right.
So yeah, sole traders. What we find is, like you say, for small businesses, it's finding the time. In larger businesses, it's like who holds this information? Like, I don't know where to go to. So there's barriers to both. But if you're committed, and you're 100% right, Emma. I was in the UK in March. I had lunch in Covent Garden with a mate of mine. Within 3 blocks of Covent Garden, there were 3 retail shops with B Corp logos in their window. It's like, it's coming, you know. So yeah, if you can't make the time to work out what you're doing and how you're doing it, pretty soon it's going to be table stakes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, any other sort of, I guess, barriers that people might either have come up against as they've started to think about it, or are thinking that they might have, that they want to ask about now? Just to expand on Nicole's question, was any recommendations for the super small startup beyond just get started? Is there any other recommendations that might come to mind for some one-man band type organization?
Just make sure you categorize yourself as a 0 employee organization, and then you won't have any questions to answer on workers.
Even if there's one person working?
If you're the founder owner, you don't count as an employee, because you are the beneficial owner of the company. So yeah, but yeah, Nicole, happy to send you some info. We'll have a quick chat. But yeah, I mean, it literally, I mean, I like my skiing, and if you're into skiing, you might know Warren Miller, and at the end of his movies, he'd say, if you don't do it this year, you'll be 1 year older when you do. It's like, you know, just, it's free to take the assessment, at least out of morbid curiosity. Go and have a look at how you're doing. And most companies, when they get in there, go, actually, do you know what? Either we are doing that, or we've thought about doing that, or we can do that. It's not this like, oh, we're never going to be a B Corp. Like, if you're part of mindful fashion, I would hazard a guess that you're possibly already doing quite a lot of good stuff that would be in the assessment.
It's also, I guess my 2 cents worth, doing the B impact assessment is a really good framework for you in terms of a sustainability plan. So if nothing else, it's a good indication of where you come to on the impact assessment sort of spectrum. But definitely get B Corp certified. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm also saying it's a very useful tool to help you work out where perhaps are areas that you can focus your attention on, where are areas that you're really strong in it. So it is a really good way to get a holistic understanding of your entire business and build out a really robust sustainability plan from there.
I think that's
any further questions? Oh, sorry.
Point, Jacinda, just that word sustainable. Like, I know it's something we've grappled with, and we have tried not to use that word sustainable for many years in our marketing, because what is it? What does it actually mean? And I think B Corp, along with some other things, is a really great way of actually putting some definitions around that. It's specifics, you know, it takes you away from greenwashing. So I think it actually, for a lot of people who are like, well, what does a sustainable business look like? It's actually, just by going into the assessment and starting to look at what they're asking, it's like, okay, this is what it looks like in more detail. And then you can talk to those things with your customers, and then it's really tangible.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And that, I mean, greenwashing is exploding. So it's really, really useful to start to think about ways to navigate that. Yeah.
But equally, the new thing I've heard a couple of weeks ago is green hushing. You know, I'm sure, you know, Emma and Fiona, you've got stuff that you're doing in your companies that people don't know about, that actually, if they knew about, they'd go, do you know what, that is quite cool. I think we're starved of good news stories of companies actually doing the right thing. And again, for me, it's independently verified. It's not our marketing team have knocked up an ad that says we've done some stuff. It's like, well, no, like, we're genuinely doing this, and it's It's been verified that this is a program or this is something that we're doing. And I think people want that.
Mm.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? I've got 10 seconds to ask them. If anything comes up from anyone that they want to ask about, please email me. I'm really happy to try and find the answer, facilitate any connections that you would like me to. And yeah, thank you so much to the speakers. So to you, Tim, for sharing all of your enormous expertise in the B Corp process, to you, Fiona, and Emma as well, both of you, for your knowledge and expertise around how this works at a sort of fashion industry level, how fashion businesses can be good for the world. So thank you very much for sharing that. And thanks to everyone. I mean, yeah, I hope you found this useful, and we will look forward to sharing all of this with you in a follow-up email. Yeah, take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.
See ya.